Hey book nerds, welcome to my channel. Today I'm filming my Rereadathon Wrap Up. So the Rereadathon was a readathon that ran from the 10th to the 16th of March, and the entire theme was that you are rereading books. There were 6 challenges, I completed 5 of them, which were all the ones that I planned on doing. If you want more detail about the challenges, I'll link my TBR video down below. You should probably watch that first if you are going to watch it, because I'm just going to talk about the books now. I read all of them, it was fantastic. I finished them all in like 4 days. Overall I had a really positive experience. I very rarely reread books, and it was so nice to just have that time to do that, to reread some of my old favourites that I haven't read for years, and to re-experience some of those things. Every single one of these books I ended up giving 4 stars to, so it was just an entire week of 4-star reads, which is really good. The first book I read was Thirtynothing by Jewell, which was my game-changing book. This is a adult romantic contemporary story about 2 friends, Dig and Nadine, and they basically met in secondary school, became really good friends, and then Dig got a girlfriend called Delilah that broke up their friendship. They then met again right before they were going to go off to university, and they kind of had a little romantic thing, but Nadine decided because she was going off to university she didn't want to be tied down, so she broke up their relationship. Then she got into a relationship at uni. They became really good friends, and then they just kind of stayed best friends for 10 years, and they're now both turning 30. And Delilah comes back into their lives. They run into her in the park, and she becomes a massive part of Dig's life again. And it's basically Nadine dealing with her jealousy about this, dealing with her hatred of Delilah, and it's just a really nice, light, fun read. There are some things in it which are slightly problematic. I don't know when it was written. I think it was written like 2003 or something. And there's just the odd sentence or two. For example, Dig mentions that he really likes Nadine because she doesn't act all emotional like most women, and she's not crazy like most women, which obviously isn't an ideal thing to read about. But it's just a really nice story. I loved rereading this. I first read it when I was like 13 maybe, and it was my first kind of adult contemporary book that I read. It's just a nice story, and I really enjoyed being part of that world again. Jewell writes really kind of down-to-earth contemporaries. They're not super fluffy and light. There's a lot of elements to them that are more not quite gritty, I guess, just real life. No one's perfect. They're all kind of real people, and they're all generally London people as well, so they kind of have this jaded edge about them, which is really nice to read about. It's not my usual genre, but if you do fancy picking up an adult contemporary romance, then I would definitely give one of Jewell's a try. They're really fun. The next book I read was Invisible Monsters by Palahniuk. This was my old favourite. I first read it, I only read it like 6 years ago, and I gave it 5 stars. This is a book that's really hard to describe what it's about, but it's essentially about a model who was in a car accident and her face got absolutely ripped up to shreds, and she kind of joins up with this trans woman and her assortment of people. And it's very much a character study. There's not a lot that happens in this book. The first time I read it I gave it 5 stars. I hadn't read anything like it before. It was a really intense story and I really enjoyed the experience. The second time reading it I did bump it down to 4 stars. I find the beginning really slow. It wasn't what I remembered at all. It was kind of not boring, but like I said, there's not really actually much of a plot to this, so it was hard for me to get into it. But then by the end I was in love with it again. There are elements of this, and I hate to use the word again, but I can see people finding problematic. It is my word of the month, clearly. There is a trans woman in this, and I'm trying not to give anything away, but basically it's not really a good representation of most people's trans experiences, shall we say, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But I found it all right because I think the book makes it clear that it's not trying to represent all trans people. You are more than welcome to disagree with me if you've read this and hated it. I am not any kind of authority on this subject. I have one of my best friends is trans. Several of my best friends are non-binary, so I do have some experience in terms of their experiences of the world, and I would be interested actually to see what their perception of this book was, or any trans people's perception of this book was, because it was something I didn't notice the first time 6 years ago. It's definitely something I notice now, but I don't think it doesn't ruin the book for me. It wasn't handled so badly, and it wasn't such a big deal that I felt that it was terrible and awful and I didn't want anything to do with the book. I think it's part of the plot and the tone of the overall story, and I think that's why I found it didn't bother me personally, but it's something you should be aware of, and I would encourage reading more reviews on Goodreads perhaps, if it's something that's interested you. The writing style for this book, like I said in the beginning, was boring, but the end is just so emotional, and it's such a weird, wonderful story, and it just has all these emotions it invokes in me. So yeah, I am giving it 4 stars. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I didn't know 6 years ago. I still don't know what to make of it, but it is a really interesting and very, very unique book. The next book I read was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This was my popular book and also my book I was giving a second chance. The first time I read this, I gave it 3 stars. I was really underwhelmed. It wasn't what I was expecting at all from the premise that everyone was talking about, and for that reason I was really disappointed, and I didn't really like the story I got. This time round, I knew exactly what kind of story I was going to get, and I really loved it. I did give it 4 stars. I bumped it up a whole star, and it's super short. It's very short. I forgot how short all of the books in this series are, but it's about a girl who has come back from a magical land, and she gets sent to this school which is by her parents, which is meant to reform her because they don't believe that she's been to a magical land. They think she was kidnapped and she's deluding herself. But when she gets to the school, she finds out that all of the children there have all visited magical lands, and the headmistress of the school has also visited a magical land, and she set up this school to help people who are having trouble readjusting to the real world because they loved their experience in these magical lands so much. That's all I'm going to say about the plot. This is fantastically written. I really like Seanan McGuire's attention to detail. She really creates great mental images of this world, all the worlds that the children have visited, and I actually really like the plot as well. That's what I didn't like the first time around, but I think if you know that the plot is actually more of a murder mystery and it's more about the characters than the magical worlds that they visited, I think that's a better idea of what the book is actually about. I'm really intrigued to read the sequels now, because the sequels do explore the magical world in a lot more detail, and I'd love to see how Seanan McGuire does that. I've noticed as well, I've read a lot of her short stories lately in various collections, and she always has a kind of dark but very flat way of describing fantasy worlds. They're always kind of, I don't know how to explain it. They're not rooted in reality because they're fantasy worlds, but they're very matter of fact, the way the protagonists react to fantastical things, and that just creates a really interesting tone, and I really love how she does that, and I'm intrigued to see if she does that with all of the characters in the sequel, because it's just kind of part of the main character's personality. But yeah, I'm so pleased that I reread this. I definitely enjoyed it more the second time. And the final book I read was Wolf Brother by Michelle Paver. This was my childhood favourite, and this is a book that I think is underrated, and I still think it's underrated. This is a fantastic children's book. It is on the younger side. It's not necessarily what you categorise as young adult. I think adult readers would enjoy this, but don't expect something like on the level of, I guess, even like the Hunger Games. It's not necessarily teenage audience. It's more 10 to 12-year-olds, but it's not written in a juvenile way. It's just kind of the simplicity of the plot and the characterization more than anything. But the writing style is really beautiful, and I do enjoy that. It's not written in a young way. It's more kind of, I don't know. I think it's more that the young adult fantasy label has become muddled because things get labelled as young adult, which shouldn't be. But anyway, Wolf Brother is the story of Torek, and it's set I think it's 6,000 years ago it's set. And Torek lives in this world where there are different tribes, and other tribes are based off animals and various things. They're clans, actually. And he's part of Wolf Clan, but he lives with his father away from everyone else, and he hasn't really met any other people ever in his life, and he's just turning 12, and his father gets murdered by a demon bear. And before he dies, his father makes him promise that he'll go to the Spirit Mountain, which no one knows where it is, no one knows how to find it. Shortly after his father's death, he encounters a wolf cub who he goes to kill because he's starving and he needs food, and he realises he can't do it, and he basically forms this incredible friendship with this wolf cub. You get chapters from the point of view of the wolf cub, and Wolf is just the cutest thing ever. It just tugs on my heartstrings so much. Wolves are my favourite animal anyway, but I think it's entirely because of this book that they are my favourite animal. And it's just, I love the creativity in describing how the wolf sees the world. It's not written like a human, it's written, so the wolf's got its own terms for everything, and it's fantastic. Anyway, Torek meets this wolf, and then he gets sucked into the world of the clans, and there's things going on that his father never told him about. It's it's not a massive series, it's a 7-book series. The books are fairly short. I really enjoyed rereading this, it's fantastic. I definitely recommend checking it out if you like the sound of the blurb. I think more people should read it, and I think it's a shame that they haven't. But yeah, I think I will continue with the rest of the series, but I don't know when. I'm not driven to read the second one right now, but I will definitely be continuing soon and reliving more of my childhood. So yeah, that is all the books that I read for Rereadathon. If you took part in Rereadathon, do let me know what you read, what you thought of them. I think there's something really interesting about rereading books and like solidifying your opinions on them, and I'll definitely be considering incorporating rereading more into my future reading plans because I did enjoy this so much, and it was just a fantastic, comfortable reading week. It was really great. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up, it helps me out massively, and I hope to see you next time.